The Porch Talk, and now here's your host, Shakey.
Well, hello, Cyberland. It is great to be back. And if you haven't noticed, Porch Talk is now being brought to you by Bigtruth Productions. I want to put a special thank you out there to Dan Lithholm, Ed Brown, and Scott Harper for inviting me into the Bigtruth family. It means a lot. It's a great honor, and I hope we have many years of working together. Now that the show is done a different way, I am now going to do the announcements and then bring the guest on, so I'll get the announcements out of the way. Bigtruth is one of the sponsors of the first annual ECBRO or Virginia Conference. That will be held in 2018, June 30th through July 1st, and your tickets are now half price. They're half price until the end of the year, so if you want to get them cheap, get them now. Go ahead and jump on them. You can go to Facebook. Do your Facebook page, ECBRO Conference, and get them there. Or if you're not on Facebook, just go to Google and Google the ECBRO Conference, and you should bring you up to a page where you can order your tickets. Or try to get a hold of Daniel Benoit somehow. He's the one who's putting it on, and he's got a bunch of great speakers lined up. So it should be a good conference. Should be a great conference, actually. So anyway, from Western New York and the Western New York Bigfoot Association, he is the founder of. I have the honor of having a guest today, Mr. Ryan Reading, who has been a researcher for a long time and has come in with some great evidence, and he's here to talk about it and his experience and what he's got going on. So without further ado, Mr. Ryan Reading, how are you today, Ryan?
How you doing? Pretty good.
Well, I'm just glad to be back. So what you got going on good? Anything?
It's always good to be back. Not too much this time of year. Had some recent things go on not too long ago. But this time of year, it seems in my area kind of just, it calms down quite a bit. You know, October's hunting season, starts hunting. A lot of hunters start getting in the woods. We've noticed they disappeared quite a bit and, stuff like that. So I'm not as intense as I am during the summer months or spring.
I hear you. Hey, all right, I'll tell you what, let's start in the beginning with you, Ryan. How did this all begin for you as a researcher? Where did it all start?
Oh, this started way back in, let's say, around 2012, 2013. This isn't something that I wanted to do. This is just, I'm the type of person that if something happens, I like to understand it, wrap my head around it, figure out the truth with it, and stuff like that. But many people know I used to do a lot of metal detecting. Go out in the woods, group of guys. We'd hit the old cellar holes, stuff like that. During some of these outings, I ended up having a sighting. Actually two, but one I was by myself. It's a startling feeling when you don't understand things. You know what I'm saying in the beginning? So in 2012, 2013, I was doing my thing, just swinging the coil, metal detecting, and this thing, what I know now, was a juvenile, maybe about roughly 20 feet from me. It was standing halfway behind a tree, and I had to do a double take. And when I did the double take, I looked up, and the thing it eased out from behind the tree, and it noticed that I noticed it. When that happened, it had like this, I call it a grimace, but not so much. Basically what it did is it bared its bottom teeth to me. I was able to see, roughly 5.5 foot tall, jet black, really long, lanky arms, things like that. At the time, you're in shock because you have no idea what this thing is. It had a rounded head, so I'm saying it's younger. It didn't have your standard sagittal crest like an older, Sasquatch would have. It looked more like a chimp face. And what happened is it turned away from me and went down on all fours. I was able to see its fingers and everything, and it was really fast. Anyway, that's kind of what started this whole thing for me. I didn't really say anything to anybody about it, maybe some close family members, but the ridicule you get from that is something it's hard to deal with. So I understand why a lot of people don't say anything. The following year, we were up on another parcel of land that kind of intersects this one, but it's, as a crow flies, it's 2 miles away. We ended up having another encounter. I was with a friend this time. He actually seen it before I did, where this massive male came out into a snowmobile trail. At first, it was kind of like in a football position, what it seems, squatting down. And when he told me, look, what is that? Look up the trail. We shared some of this reenactment in the I've Seen Bigfoot documentary. So we're looking at this thing, and it starts to stand up. And, oh, my God, as it stood up, it just seemed like it was never going to end. It was a good 40 to 45-second interaction, really, really long. You almost get like tunnel vision while you're trying to examine this thing, while your brain is cognitively saying, what is this thing? At that time, right about then, my buddies, what is that thing? And what happened to me is my first encounter came rushing back to me. And as that happened, I realized, this is the same thing, but it's grown. It's an adult. Right then it turned to its right. And as it turned to its right, it stepped out with its right leg, 2 steps gone into the woods. But what had happened is it hit its head on a branch. The pine branch, it kind of shook vigorously enough for my mindset to say, hey, that's like a marker. The following day, we got out of there after all that. We ended up getting back to the truck because we were scared out of our mind. I said, hey, I don't want that thing to flank us, and I didn't know much about Bigfoot at the time, but the next day we went back up there. I said, hey, Brian, a friend of mine, he actually passed away, God rest his soul, but I said, let's measure that. And what we did is we measured from the ground to that branch for height, reference. It was 9'8". It's a really something to see something that big. And right then and there, I kind of made up my mind. I said, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I know they're real now. Now I've seen them. I've witnessed them with somebody else. And that's kind of what threw me into this whole research, I guess you'd call it, debacle. I've learned a lot of things over the years. I've applied standard hunting tactics to try to figure these things out. I've had a lot of encounters since then, about 7, 8 visuals, recorded some things, but that's kind of what got me into this. Just those 2 odd sightings that, I don't know, it really, it changed me. I don't know if for the better or worse, but it changed me.
Well, you got bit by the bug, the Bigfoot bug. What do you think your best evidence is that you've come across since you've been doing it?
Could you repeat that?
What do you think your best evidence is that you've come across since you started Bigfoot?
Oh, it all depends what you consider evidence. I mean, I've obviously caught video, which many people have seen. I've caught photos that people have seen. I found tracks just like many other people. We've gotten hair samples, which we actually sent off a while ago to New York to get tested. We've had a few, no interesting. I mean, there's been results, but nothing too definitive. A lot of hair samples will come back, human or inconclusive. Even though the samples have been washed, they use certain things to clean and decontaminate the samples. But as far as the best evidence, I mean, that's up to I guess, anybody to, it's their judgment call. It all depends, As far as me, my best evidence is my visuals. That can't be taken away from me or any of my team members. It's like I said, it's a judgment call.
You've had some weird experiences out there in the woods. I've talked to you before about things, and you had an incident where you kind of got lost at one point. And have you found anything that you can say could be supernatural about these creatures, or have you found anything to back that up?
That is a touchy subject.
I know it is.
But this is what I say. I have to be truthful to myself. Okay, so I'll go ahead and explain my interaction and my encounters, that have happened as far as that goes. So what had happened is we had gone into a certain core area where we were kind of habituating a ton, matter of fact. And we were getting all kinds of stuff. One of our trail camera photos came off of their side of it looks like the side of a juvenile's face. So this core area was really paying off. So the one day we went in there, we split up. Usually we split into teams, but that day there was only 3 of us. So my one guy said, "Hey, I'm going to go up to the green room." We call it the green room. We have different sections that are labeled and marked and mapped. And so anyway, he said, "I'm going to go up to the green room and pick up the recorder that's there." I said, "Okay, you go do that. Me and my other guy here, we'll go ahead and, just take a walk. And he's going to do some photography while I switch out the 8 game camera cards that are here." He said, "Okay." He takes off. Us two, myself and John, we head into this one ridge area. This is kind of hard to talk about because these things that have happened to me, I truly don't have an explanation for. But anyway, I go in, and I probably split off from him 50 yards, if that. The camera was maybe 70 yards. I couldn't have been 30 yards from him. And I was actually doing a live Facebook thing on my phone at the time. And I believe a person Lael, was actually watching the video. And what had happened is I'm walking through the woods. I'm walking toward the camera. I'm talking on the phone to the live. And all of a sudden, like, I don't know what happened, but I ended up lost. Okay, so I come to it. The phone is black. It's dead, and I'm just standing there. Middle of the woods. I'm just standing there. Phone's down to my side, and I don't know where I'm at. So I look at the phone. I see what I'm trying to do here, and I go to turn the compass on, and the compass is just spinning and spinning on my phone. I've never had that happen. I tried to shut the phone down, power it back up, still spinning when I opened up the app and everything. And so I start looking around. I'm like, okay, I don't recognize anything. I look for the moss in the trees, and the moss is all the way around the trees, so that couldn't give me direction. I had no direction. I tried to look at the way the sun was setting, and I really couldn't see through the foliage. Summertime kind. It's heavy foliage. So I started to panic a little bit, but as that panic set in, I was able to hear like footsteps to my left, and it sounded like boom, 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 but rapid. Like it seemed like something was walking away from me, but I couldn't see it. Okay, so ultimately I had to dial 911 because I had yelled out at the top of my lungs. Imagine the scream that you could scream in a valley, And I did that in hopes that my researchers buddies were close by. I'm thinking I can't be that far away. And I screamed and I screamed, and I got no response. And I'm thinking to myself, that's when the real panic set in, because I didn't understand why they couldn't hear me. I figured at most I could have been 200 yards. I didn't know what happened. So I ended up calling 911. to get out of the woods. I had to call 911. He pings my phone. He tells me, where I'm at, and he tells me, walk this direction. I said, sir, if I knew which way west or east was, I wouldn't have called you. He's like, okay, so what you need to do is walk one direction for, like 100 paces, so he could re-ping it and see which way I moved to tell me which way to go, left, right, north, south, east, west, whatever. So he does that, and he tells me, okay, you're a mile and a half from this road. And I'm like, I'm a mile and a half from that road. I don't say the road because I try to keep things confidential. And he's like, so you need to go that direction. So I stayed on the phone, which seemed like, I don't know, about 15 minutes or so with him. And he's like, he's tracking my progress. And at that time is when I let out a yell again, and the researchers that I was with were able to hear me. So I tell him, all right, I hear them. I'm going to head back toward that direction. Ultimately, I get out of the woods. I hang up the phone with him, and my researcher buddies are like, dude, where the hell were you? I'm like, if I could tell you, I would. But they're like, where did you go? I'm like, I don't know. They said, you've been gone like almost 45 minutes. And I was thinking to myself, how does that even happen? Like, it's a definite time loss. But see, that wasn't the first incident. That was just the major incident. Along our research over the 2 years that this was happening, we would all experience this time loss. We'd go in the woods, hey, it's 1 o'clock. We'll be back at the truck, for 4 o'clock. We'd get back and it was 7 o'clock. And we're like, where did the time go? Like, just these little things that, I would mention this to the other researchers along the way. So when this finally happened, they're like, dude, that's crazy. Like, we've been experiencing that, and you've even talked about that. Like, it was really hard to swallow because I don't know how I got from point A to point B, a mile and a half away. I mean, I was far. I was totally in an area I had never even been. A lot of people talk about, portals or time warps or even aliens, anything. I have no idea. But what is intriguing is that same area that I had disappeared from and ended up in another location. I had a trail camera there this past year, and I caught some really crazy lights on the camera that look like they're shining from above, kind of like a helicopter or UFO or something, where the light bends. There's even a part where something against the laws of physics happens. There's a stick in the middle of the picture, and it looks like it goes straight up in the air. And multiple people have, I actually really didn't see that until other people pointed this out to me. I kind of screen this to a few people before I share my videos and we talk about it, and then I could point them out to people. But so I was having a lot of weird things. We captured this object on FLIR one night. We took a group of people out. There was about 8 of us. I don't know. We were out there for a few hours in the dark. Got back to the parking area where the vehicles are, and my buddy wanted to look at the moon through the FLIR. So as he does that, there's this inanimate object, which seems to be spherical. It comes across the parking lot, but the odd thing is it doesn't have a heat signature to it. It looks grayish. It doesn't have the white or the black, depending on what mode you're on. It didn't show real heat. So it was really odd. It wasn't in the shape of a bird, and it went right directly into the woods. And, we tried to review it and figure out what that was. We still have no idea. So over this time, things have started progressing to where we see different types of lights in the woods. We've seen crazy things. We've seen the ground emitting crazy amounts of lights, yellows, blues, greens, purples, which I actually have a photo of that from a few years ago. I've caught trees that seem to, if you want to call it, emit its own light or have some type of being come out of it. but pictures don't lie. Photos, they don't lie. It is what it is. So when I actually try to tell a story or explain a circumstance that's happened, I'm only doing that if I have some type of photographic evidence, even if it's not the best. At least I try to do it to that extent. Like, hey, this is what happened, and here's this. You know what I mean? At least so it's relative to the point where I'm not just speaking and trying to tell you some fairy tale, because that's not the case. That all kind of led up to November 2016. See, let me state in the beginning, I always thought these creatures were flesh and blood. That's how I started doing this. I just followed other researchers, seen it online, once I had my sightings, and I said, that's what I'm going to do. So I started doing the old school method until things started changing over and over. And November 2016, I was in a tree stand. I didn't really tell anybody about this. It took me a good month, but I wanted to get this out there. So I ended up doing a video about it, sitting in a tree stand, and we all know, like, the classic wood knock sounds. Debatable what the sounds really are, because so many people think they're, could be a multitude of different things, but relating them to Sasquatch, I knew that there was possibly one or two off to my left and right where the valleys are. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, but then I got to thinking, like, it's going to be getting dark. I should probably get out of here, but I didn't, right around dusk there, where it's getting dark, off to my left, there is a old logging trail, and usually the deer come down this trail. It's kind of grown in, grass 3-4 foot high, but it's still, a trail. I happened to glance to my left, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes after I heard that, 8 to 10 minutes after I heard that knock off to my left side. I look to my left, and this thing steps out, which we all know as a Sasquatch, Bigfoot. It steps out, and it kind of, it's hard to explain. So my heart is racing at this time. And what it does is it goes across the path, and it turns, and its back is actually to me, and it picks its head up. And when it picks its head up, like when you would inhale really hard, like, well, that's what the sound I heard, like it was trying to inhale or smell something. And that's what really got me panicked, because I was wondering, does it smell me? Does it know that I'm here? I do have an ozonics machine that emits ozone that I hunt with. That usually it helps kill your scent, let's say it that way. Anyway, this whole thing is taking place, and I don't really know what to do. I can't get it on film. I can't really move. I have the bow in my hand. I'm thinking to myself, should I just shoot this thing and end the debate? And I'm like, well, how wrong is that if I shoot it in its back, I mean, and I'm thinking, well, I got a bow. A bow wouldn't kill it. That's how I felt. And then I'm like, well, it's probably not alone, because I heard the other noise down on the ridge. So as I'm sitting there, it proceeds to walk away from me, maybe 30 to 40 yards. And there's all these logs that look like an AKA core area, AKA wallow, which I overlooked at the time, because what I do is, when you're in hunting mode or when you're scouting for tree stands or locations, you're not really looking for Bigfoot sign. Your brain kind of switches on and off. So I was keying in on hunting. Well, once it had gone to that area where those logs were, it clicked in my head. And I was like, oh my God, I overlooked that. Like that's like where they visit, or that's their wallow, or whatever it is. So as I'm watching it, it reaches down. It literally moves this log with its one arm. And I'm telling you, this log's 20 foot long, a regular tree, 16 inch around like a tree. It reaches down behind it, which is, away from me. Its back is to me. And it grabs something. Now, I don't know what it grabbed. I'm not going to speculate to say what it grabbed, because I have no idea. It proceeds to turn around, and it's coming right back at me. And this is the point in time where I'm like, my fight flight mechanism kicked in, and I've got the bow in my hand, the arrow's in it, you know, it's pulled out of the tree, and it's like, if this thing comes, I got to let something fly. So I've already got my release hooked on the bow. So all I'd have to do is pull back and, you know, let go. And as it starts to come back, it kind of veers away from me and heads up kind of the way it came from, but off to my left, there's a huge oak tree. One of the big oak trees where, like, you have to wrap 3 people around it to get, you know, to touch hands. As it goes behind this tree, I'm watching and watching and watching. Its first leg, this is the crazy part about the story. Its first leg comes out. As anything else, you'd be anticipating its next leg or its right leg and the rest of the body to come out. As that happens, I see a blue flash, almost like the only thing I can refer it to is the old TV sets from back in the day, in the 50s and 60s. When you push the power button, you would get that blue line across the screen to shut the TV off. That's what it looked like. And simultaneously, when I seen that blue flash, it was gone. I'm looking and looking. I mean, I'm straining my eyes to figure out where. I heard no more sounds, no more leaves, no walking. It was gone. That's the time where a lot of things in my mind changed. Because I have heard other people that, you know, talk about that, and they sound crazy. Like, how can you, you know, first we're talking about Bigfoot here, and then you're talking about one that essentially disappears. I don't know. I just tell people what I witnessed. I wish I would have been able to get it on camera. But to stay true to myself, I have to tell people all these circumstances to let them know how I got to the position or my belief of what they are.
Well, that's all you can do, you know. And yeah, I've known you for a long time, and you know, your stories have never changed or deviated. And I, you know, I was watching one of your videos one day, and I watched your camera on a tripod actually get up and go over top of a log and fall. It didn't fall over the log; it actually went up and over it and fell over. You know, so I've seen that weird. I've seen that weird stuff too, man. I don't know. It's crazy.
The circumstance that you're actually talking about, I was live on my handheld device, my cell phone, doing a Facebook Live. I was sitting there. I had the camera on the tripod. I was sitting on the log, and I got, you know, the Facebook Live going, talking to people. And I said, hey, I'm going to take a walk up here and show you guys, you know, what's going on. As I got up, I maybe walked 5 steps away, and the camera on the tripod actually flipped over a log upside down, and it startled me because, you know, I was 5 feet away from it. So I spun around with the phone, and I was like, I was lost for words for a second. And I think people have seen that on Facebook. You know, they were able to see that video, that how the camera ended up A and B like that. You know, we use expensive equipment, so it's not like I would try to do that, or, you know what I mean, be sloppy enough to actually ruin an expensive camera like that. It's unreal. And actually, that camera, since that day, that camera right now is in the shop trying to be fixed, because that circumstance actually affected the camera to the point where it won't hold a charge and it won't work as it should. I actually had to go out and purchase that camera all over again. But right now, there's a place we call Stereo Clinic. The guy, you know, in my area, he does all electronics, and he's trying to figure out what's actually wrong with the camera, because he can't really figure it out. If anything, it'll have to go back to Panasonic, but we're going to see if it works. But in the meantime, I had to go out and purchase that camera all over because of that incident. So I'm actually glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I was watching it live. That's when I saw it. That was really, really wild. It blew my mind. You Now, have you done any writings on the subject?
I've. You mean written anything myself?
Yeah. I didn't know if you've ever written any papers or books, or have you done any writings on what you've done, or.
I've done blogs, standard blogs like normal people. I write some of my Facebook groups, but as far as a book, I have started a book. I have the cover, and I have, a few other things. I mean, I'm on page like 100, but I don't want to rush to write it. I don't feel that, even though my experiments experiences or experiments that I've done are extraordinary, I need to keep learning. So it's I'm trying to write the truth about everything that I've experienced, and what others have experienced, and it's kind of a taboo subject. It really is, because there's so much backlash from so many different people. I'm open-minded. I pay attention to both sides of the spectrum. We can say these two fractions. I don't like to call them camps. Let's call them fractions. You got your woo side, or your paranormal, and your standard old school. They're flesh and blood. But I pay attention to both, because there are people out there doing good research in both areas. But what you will notice, little by little, this faction, the paranormal faction, is gaining ground at a rapid pace. So over the last 50, 70 years, we really haven't had the data that anybody has wanted. But now people are starting to follow this paranormal thing. Is it related directly? I can say that there's something going on. I don't know if it's aliens. I don't know what Bigfoot has to do with it. I just know that they have abilities that people cannot fathom. And there's things that are going on. I don't know. I mean, I got a little off topic, but yeah, I mean, I've done some writings in the book. Like I said, I don't want to, it's not something I want to rush. If it takes 5 more years, it takes 5 more years, but that's the route I'm going.
All right. Well, let me ask you this question, and you don't have to answer this question, but let me ask you this question. How do you feel, or what is your opinion on the Bigfoot community itself?
Well, normally that's something I wouldn't answer, and I would just stay away from it. But
yeah, I can.
The way I
can understand.
The way I look at it is right. The way I look at it is, you've got a lot of people that do have sightings, like myself in the beginning, that are looking for answers, that have no idea about what they've seen. And once they see it, they scour the internet, they scour YouTube, they find these groups, and maybe they start searching, or maybe they just want an answer. We need to focus on helping these people a lot more. And our community has not done a good job of that. Your other researchers, real researchers like myself and other people, I don't share everything on YouTube. I mean, I just give you insight to what's kind of going on. If I shared every video or every piece of information, I'd be on YouTube every day. You know what I mean? I'm trying to put pieces of the puzzle together. Why are they using structures? What's going on? This, that, and the third. There's other people. Everybody knows Derek Randalls. Great guy, good research. He's not out there sharing everything on YouTube or anything like that. But we do need to at least put our differences aside to try to tell people, and explain to people, what they saw, what's going on, So our community is so up in arms. It's divided. It's tragic too, because I think if more people were out there experiencing things, and I'm not pushing that, because believe me, there are some things that can happen to you that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And being a hunter my whole life, I never paid attention to any of these things until I actually seen one. And then, I started learning and putting it all together. I don't have all the answers. Probably never will, but some of the things that have happened to myself, after one of my experiments, this is a thing I'll just break into real quick. Dr. Johnson, I was doing an experiment in Western New York. I was friends with Dr. Johnson. Yes, I did talk to him on the phone, Matthew. We didn't ever express anything that we were doing, just kind of findings, et cetera, et cetera. He had no knowledge of me doing anything with any type of magnetic experiment, nor did I have any idea of what he was doing 3,000 miles away from New York. Just so happens we were essentially doing the same type of experiment because we had both come to that same correlation that this is a vibrational frequency and things can be manipulated, and there's a lot of things that go into this. So I ended up capturing some odd things on camera while we did these magnetic experiments, simple experiments that anybody could try to do. And he started capturing some of the same things. So I came out with my findings. He obviously expressed his. Even though we do some of the same research per se, our findings can be different, and my opinion can be different than his. He's a good guy. I don't never down anybody. I'm just not that type of person. But I think that the more that people get out there, the more danger they can possibly be in. I'm not saying that they're the David Paulides going to steal your kids type of thing. But there's things that you can, how do I say this? You could possibly get an attachment to you, because obviously there are other things in the woods that we just don't know about. People report them all the time, from dogman and other creatures to, aliens, whatever it may be, spiritual even. And if you're unaware of things, you can get an attachment. And I fear that's kind of what had happened to me, because I was so into it so much. So I was like a revolving door. I was always out there until the oddities started happening. And the biggest thing what kind of made me back off, as far as now a little bit, was the issues I was having, being scratched in my home and things happening at my house, which a lot of people that have been doing this a really long time talk about the woo, that these things can happen and they're related to Bigfoot. I don't have any direct evidence that the paranormal Bigfoot is real, except for my own sighting. What it was able to do, circumstantial things that have happened to me. But along the way, I was able to capture and document some good things that, I did share on YouTube that people did see in videos. So I don't know. It's been crazy. It really has.
Oh, wow. I imagine there's got to, I don't know, I imagine there's some paranormal out there. We don't know what graveyards could be in the woods from so many years ago that have grown over, or even or Native American graveyards that are out there that, so who knows? I mean, it's hard to say.
I'll definitely tell you this. I know there are a lot of old schoolers, your standard flesh and blood Bigfoot researchers, that have experienced phenomena. Many, I will say many, have experienced phenomena, and it stays between a small group of people. They don't talk about it. They won't come out and, really express what happened, either because they're in fear or they're not being true to themselves. I mean, let's face it, if we're not being true to ourselves in this research, then what are we doing? Then why am I here? I'm not going to get the correct answer, so I'm lying to myself, right?
That's right. That's
what I tell people. You have to be honest to yourself. I know it's hard to speak about, and I know you get deemed whatever they want to deem you. but I'm not here for that. You can deem me whatever you feel is necessary, but one day I'll have that answer. And when it makes sense, I mean, then people can start to do their own thing. I just wish the community as a whole would kind of put their differences aside and just say, hey, let's just sit down and let's check this out, you know?
Well, we're coming up on 50 years from the Patterson-Gimlin film, and what have we accomplished in that 50 years? We know it's covered with hair. We know it walks upright, and I think that's about it. You know, we haven't
Exactly.
we haven't found anything new. We haven't discovered any. And there are people that'll say, "Well, yeah, we have." No, we haven't. You know, and I hate to say it, but we haven't. It's getting worse. You know, people have learned how to hoax better and do things different, and I just, you know, it's sad, but so
see that's something that kind of upsets me when they talk about hoaxers and things like that. You know, I can't stomach it. I don't stomach it because I know the amount of time that we've put in, the amount of equipment, the amount of time away from your family. For it's more for us to learn, but along the way we're going to share some things, like I said, tidbits along the way. And when people do these things or hoax or play games like it's a joke, it turns me right off. It actually pisses me off. I'll be blunt. You know, because it's always for money or something, you know, or fun and games, but they don't really realize, you know, maybe they don't realize what's really out there, you know, but it just, in a sense, it just don't sit well with me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not good. It's not good for the whole community. And, you know, it's not, there's a lot of people putting a lot of hard work and time into it. And when somebody people do not really understand how much time you're spending in the woods, even if it's just sitting there in the woods. You know, like I said, when I was habituating, you're talking 4 to 5 days a week, and it's unreal. And you have to, you know, you spend money because you have to refill things and give them what they need or what they like or what's bringing them in, and so on and so forth, you know, and you have to make that trek to that area, and there's so much going over audio. I mean, going over footage, you know, things like that. I'm not one to just, how do I say this? I don't like to just go and look at structures. Okay. If I'm looking at a structure, I look at it as a puzzle. I'm trying to figure out why it's there, what the situation was, why would they build it here? What is it for? You know, a lot of people talk about, well, follow one and it'll lead you to the next, the next, the next, and everybody's got their own ideas. But let me tell you what, even, let's just say this creature's flesh and blood, right? Smart. Has to be smarter than us because it's evaded us this long. You're going to tell me that this thing needs to build structures to find its way through the woods, or tell other family members, hey, follow this and that leads to water? No other animal does that. Bears, deer, coons, turkey, no other animal builds these, whatever you want to call them, structures to say, hey, you need to go this way through the woods. It's programmed. They know where they're going. They're not getting lost and, you know, things like that. So I cannot see a Bigfoot making a structure for that simplistic reason to, hey, follow this and you'll get to water, you know, like a caveman. A person might do that. You know, Indians leave tree markers. That's what they used to do. I highly doubt that this type of animal or creature or whatever it is building that for that simplistic purpose. Yeah, that makes sense. That really makes sense. Where,
Yep.
All right, let me ask you this then. Did you ever have any influences in your, you know, coming along in your research? Did you have anybody you'd like to follow that you that gave you inspiration or ideas?
I'll say this. I'm kind of labeled your controversial researcher, okay? They labeled me controversial because I don't follow the standard certificate of guidelines here, okay? Yes, I talk to a lot of people I admire a lot of people for what they do. I've paid attention to the North American wood ape, their whole thing they got going on, the conservancy there. I mean, I've talked to almost every person out there, every different type of researcher from your. I don't really like to name names, you know what I mean, but I've never really had influence. But what I did when I started is I started looking at people. Let's say like Scott Carpenter. Let's say I spoke with Steve Culls. I did a lot of things and paid attention to what a lot of people were doing, and then I kind of just adapted my own style and did my own independent thing. And what happened is our own research and the way we approach things kind of blew up online, in a sense that people started paying attention, like, whoa, look what they're seeing, look what they're getting, look at the sounds, look at the audio. But essentially what I did is we used our hunting tactics that we used for 20 years to get a big buck, let's say. And we kind of started applying it to them. And then once we started learning what the Bigfoot were doing and how they were moving from these core areas, they would constantly move. They don't stay in one area too long, and the things that they were doing. We were just essentially learning from them. So then we were kind of like broadcasting that online, and people were like, wow, how'd they come up with that? Or how did they know that? Or how is that? And it's just things we were learning from them. But as far as, I didn't really have any inspiration. I mean, I've read books, watched seminars, but I've really never said, hey, that's my idol or something like that.
Yeah, I can understand that. Where do you see your research heading to, or here in the future? What do you see yourself doing?
A lot of people ask me why I don't travel. Why don't you go to this state? Why don't you come to this state? And I tell them, I'm trying to focus on my home range, on my home area. My area's kind of been overlooked. Western New York was never really a hotbed for Sasquatch. But as I dug deeper, the last 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years, there have been numerous sightings in Cattaraugus and in Chautauqua County, all over the place. So I don't travel, and I try to, like I said, it's like having a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. That's what I have here. I have my own little thing, and I'm really trying to hone in on them, figure out what they do, when they do it, how they do it, so I can get answers here. If I start to travel other places, it's going to be different. And I'm not trying to bring that in per se to my research, because that could affect it, or negatively, I mean, even positively, or who knows. But I got a little off topic. What was your actual question again?
I'm sorry, where your research was headed.
Okay. So I'm, like I said, I'm going to keep it in my area, and I don't really, I mean, I'll do conferences and things like that, but I don't plan on traveling. I'm really trying to focus on this one area really hard. You know what I mean? I don't know where it's going to go, because usually it's led by them. When you get close to them and interact and learn from them, that often depicts what's going to happen in the future. I can say I want to do this and do that and do this and do that. I'd like to do a couple different experiments out there. I really wish I had the money or the backing or the funding to do some crazy types of experiments, but some of the equipment is just unreal. Because I believe that there's some type of vibrational frequency that they can tap into, which I would say is the Earth's energy, like Higgs boson. It's an actual energy field that's all around you all the time. And if we can find a way to manipulate, first we'd have to know what their vibrational range is. But if you could find a way to manipulate that, you could almost essentially have them at your beck and call. You could say, hey, look it, boom, there they are, because you were able to alter that frequency. There it is. You guys see it? That would be awesome. But I don't really know which direction. I'm just going to keep doing my thing. The weird thing is, as of last month, some of the trail camera photos that I captured, I had backed away a little bit because of the scratching and crazy things that I don't even like to talk about. And yes, I'm Catholic, and I don't want anything bad, knock on wood. So, but what I noticed is they seem to be following me. I don't know how to prove that to anybody except for some of the game cam photos that I've captured. But when we moved away from the core area, I said, okay, it's time for me to kind of start focusing on hunting. October's coming quick. I got to get up, the game cams, put them up there, start looking for the deer, see where the bucks are moving, get everything, labeled out so I know what's what for hunting. Same thing you would do with Sasquatch, but I never put the cameras up in intent to say, hey, maybe we'll get a Bigfoot. Not once. I switch modes and I'm strictly hunting. I've been an avid hunter and that's what it is. But it seems like they followed us from the core area to our hunting grounds, which is 200 acres sandwiched between 4,000 or 5,000 acres of state land. And I started capturing, more game cam photos. And a lot of people say, well, game cameras don't work. And I said, over the course of my 5-6 years now, whatever, they've worked tremendous for me. I don't know if I'm able to, maybe it's an insight of a hunter that is able to place that camera where they would understand something would move or what, but we've caught many, many game camera photos that I deem are pretty damn good. And I don't see a lot of other people that do get them, but the ones that do, I commend them.
Yeah, I've seen a few a few cameras, a few pictures myself that I gotta shake my head at. All right, man. Look, I'm gonna ask you one last question. If you have to give advice to anybody new to this wonderful community or to this wonderful world of Bigfooting, what would your advice be to them?
It's a good question. My advice would be, don't seek the answers that you're not ready to get. That would be my ultimate information to them. Just don't start seeking and looking for the truth if you're not ready for that truth. Because along the way, crazy things will happen, and it gets overwhelming. So, just be careful. If you are one of the ones that has to have the answer, like myself, or some type of truth, just do it cautiously. There's other animals besides Sasquatch in the woods too. Your regular animals, your bears. And if you're not familiar with the woods, don't just start traipsing around the woods. And I see a lot of people that are new to this subject, and they see somebody online who's holding an outing wherever it may be, and I want to go, and they just go there, and you're putting all your trust into this person or whoever it may be to get you in the woods, get you out of the woods, keep you safe. You can't do that. You have to be prepared. You have to check your own maps. You have to have your own directional items. You need to be able to read a compass. There's things you need to be able to do going into a foreign territory. You cannot just put your trust in somebody that you see online. Your average Joe can get lost. Things happen. you got to do your own homework before you hit the woods. That's probably some of my best information I can give somebody.
Oh man, that's great. That's some really good some good advice. Okay, if anybody's listening to this and doesn't know you or heard of you, which I doubt because I think you're pretty popular, how can they follow you or where can they catch up with you to see what you're up to?
Well, we don't usually share everything, but the things that we do share, I have a couple Facebook pages. Let's Prove It, Evidence Review, and Bridging the Gap Between Sasquatch and Woo. I also share on Twitter and Instagram, just photos here and there. Western NY Bigfoot on YouTube. And that's mainly it. You know, like I said, we just share some of the information. Even if it's controversial or not, we share it. We share the truth. That's just what it boils down to. Cool.
Ryan, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I really do. Thank you. It's really great having you on, and I think of you as a good friend and a fellow researcher, and I really appreciate this. I also want to thank Bigtruth Productions. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I thank you too.
Well, thank you. I want to thank Bigtruth Productions. If you're watching this on Bigtruth's YouTube channel, please like, subscribe, and hit that little bell thing. And if you're watching this on my channel on Porch Talk with Shakey, then please like and subscribe. Check out my Instagram. You can check out my Twitter, and you can catch me on Facebook. And there will be like I said, there'll be a new page coming. So look out for that on Facebook also. And everybody, you have a great night, and God bless, and thank you all very much for tuning in.